War has many faces, but none so silent as the assassin. When the cannon's roar fades and the trenches quiet, when the night thickens like oil and breath is held in uneasy silence, they move. They are known by many names: ghost wolves, the secret knives, the subtle vipers, the Sultan's wrath. Whatever title they bear, the assassins of the Sultanate inspire terror even in the hearts of the fearless. Shadows that leave no footprints, whispers that speak only in death. The Sultanate Assassins are not warriors in the way men understand the word. They are not soldiers to be seen charging the field, nor martyrs to be remembered in mourning hymns. They are something else, a presence, a certainty. The final breath of a man who never knew he was marked. In the endless slaughter of the Trench Crusade, where heretics march in endless columns and the faithful drown in their own blood, victory is measured not in battles won, but in lives ended. A single death, one voice silenced among millions, can shift the course of entire wars. The Sultan knows this, and so his wrath walks unseen, clad in the silks of the void and the poisons of forgotten gods. The Assassins are a legendary order of mystic killers, infamous across the world for their esoteric arts and merciless efficiency. Atop a forbidding mountain looms the onyx fortress of Alamut, the Unconquerable. Behind its shadowed walls, ancient magi hoard secrets beyond reckoning. Some whisper that the founder of the order, Rashid ad-Din Sinan, the old man of the mountain, still rules from within. A ludicrous rumor, of course, for that would make him nearly 8 centuries old. There are stories, of course. Stories of generals who spoke blasphemy at dusk and were found with blackened lips before dawn. Of priests who turned from the faith, only to be found prostrated before the altar, their veins split open like offerings. The foolish call it divine punishment, the work of vengeful spirits. The wise know better. The wise whisper the name of Alamut. The assassins of the Sultanate do not simply kill, they erase. No trace of their coming remains, no warning is ever given. The victim simply ceases to be, their existence carved away with the cold precision of a surgeon's knife. To the assassins, death is an art, a discipline honed through agony, sacrifice, and devotion. Their blades do not falter, their purpose does not waver. To be chosen is to be damned, to walk a path where the self is discarded and only the mission remains. Though many within the Iron Wall consider the Ismaili sect heretical, a pact sealed in blood and necessity binds the Sultan to the mountain. Thus, it is not uncommon for the warbands of the faithful to count among their number one of these supreme killers. Through sacred rituals and mind-altering hallucinogens discovered by the magi of their order, the assassins manipulate space and time itself. They prowl unseen beyond enemy lines, striking with merciless precision before slipping away as if they were never there. To their victims, they seem to exist in 2 places at once, lunging with impossible speed, striking true, then vanishing backward in time to a moment before the killing blow, untouched by retaliation. For centuries, the assassins have served as the Sultan's invisible hand, shaping the war without ever being seen. Some claim they are not men at all, but something older. Echoes of a time when the world was ruled not by kings, but by knives in the dark. Others say they are merely tools, bound by faith, driven by poisons and prophecy. The truth, if it exists at all, is known only to the dead. The war is eternal. The trenches stretch beyond sight, beyond time, a vast and endless graveyard where faith is tested and flesh is devoured. But where there is war, there will always be death. And where there is death, there will always be those who walk its path without fear, without mercy. Some men wield swords, some command armies. The Sultanate Assassins wield silence, and in silence, they carve history. There is a place where the sky touches the world with jagged frozen fingers, a place where the wind carries no sound, where the earth itself resists the touch of mortal feet. Here, high above the burning trenches and the blood-drenched battlefields, stands Alamut, the Unconquerable, the hidden eye of the Sultan. Few men have ever seen it. Fewer still have left its walls alive. Those who do speak of a fortress not built but grown, carved from the bones of the mountain, its towers twisting toward the heavens like the fingers of a dying god. The wind does not howl here. It whispers, murmuring secrets older than the war itself. This is not a stronghold of warlords or generals. It is something else, a sanctum of death, a monastery of killers. It is said the fortress was old before the first heresy, before the gates of hell were torn open and the world was drowned in blood and madness. The Ismaili sect that calls it home has survived for centuries, adapting, enduring, perfecting their sacred craft. While kingdoms have burned and crusades have risen and fallen, the Order of Assassins has remained, eternal, patient, a blade hidden beneath the veil of history. The Sultanate's war against the Heretics is waged with fire and steel, with great cannons and lines of fearless soldiers. But war is not only fought in the trenches, in the darkness beyond the battlefield, where whispers weigh more than armies, where a single dagger can shift the balance of faith and heresy, the assassins are the true arbiters of fate. Their pact with the Sultan is unspoken, yet unbreakable. He does not command them, he merely names a name. They decide when and how that name is forgotten. Within Alamut, there is no childhood, no past, no identity beyond service. The novices are taken as children, stripped of their names, their memories, their selves. They are not taught to fight, not at first. First, they are taught to forget, to unmake themselves. A warrior fights for glory. A martyr fights for paradise. An assassin fights for neither. An assassin simply obeys. There is no light within Alamut's lower halls, only the glow of unseen braziers and the shimmer of venomous tinctures. The air is thick with the scent of rare alchemical concoctions, poisons that do not kill but unmake, venoms that leave no corpse, only a hushed absence where once a man stood. In the great halls of stone and shadow, the assassins do not train in the way of soldiers. They learn patience. They learn silence. They learn to kill with a glance, with a word, with a whisper. And when they are ready, they are given their first blade. It is not a weapon of steel or iron. It is a living thing, forged from the blood of those who came before, tempered in the venom of ancient creatures that do not belong to this world. It does not gleam in the torchlight. It does not shine. It drinks the light, swallows it whole, as if it knows its purpose. A blade of the Order does not cut flesh. It severs fate. Alamut is no fortress. It is a wound in the world, a scar upon history, an eye that never closes. It watches. It waits. And when the Sultan's enemies breathe their final breath, when their blood spills soundlessly onto the dirt, they will not curse the name of their killer. They will curse the mountain. They will curse the place that sees all. War is waged in blood, but it is decided in whispers. Armies clash, trenches collapse, the dead pile high in the mud, but the true balance of power is struck in the unseen spaces between battles. A war can be won before the first cannon fires, if the right throat is cut, if the right hand is severed, if the right voice is stilled. This is the truth the Sultan has always known, and it is why the assassins of Alamut do not serve him as soldiers do. They are not his warriors. They are not his subjects. They are his knives in the dark, and a knife does not swear fealty, it simply kills when commanded. The pact between the Sultan and the old man of the mountain is not written in treaties or signed with ink. It is older than such things. It was forged in necessity, in the brutal calculus of survival. The Sultanate, for all its power, cannot afford to waste its strength in the mire of the trenches. Every janissary lost is an irreplaceable blade. Every alchemical weapon destroyed is a relic that cannot be reforged. The war against the Heretics is fought not only on the battlefield, but in the halls of power, in the meeting chambers of the corrupt, in the secret rooms where betrayal is whispered behind gilded curtains. The assassins make sure those whispers die before they become threats. They do not fight for the Sultan, but they kill in his name. His enemies become their prey, his grievances their obligations. And in return, the Sultan does not interfere. He does not ask what happens within Alamut's walls, does not seek to control those who dwell in the mountain's shadow. He does not own them. He does not need to. But this is not a pact of equals. For all their mastery of death, the assassins are bound as surely as the Sultan's janissaries. Theirs is a faith not in banners or rulers, but in the art of killing itself. They believe in death as others believe in gods. They see it as sacred, a truth older than kings and wars. Their service is not a choice, it is their existence. To live as an assassin is to know that one's life is already forfeit, that one is nothing more than a vessel through which the blade passes. To refuse a contract is to invite execution. To fail a mission is to erase one's own name. A Sultanate assassin does not fear death, because he knows he has been dead since the moment he was chosen. But there is something deeper, something unspoken beneath the cold pragmatism of this pact. The old man of the mountain does not serve the Sultan's empire. He serves an idea, a war older than the one fought in the trenches, a belief that the world is a game of knives where only those who move unseen can shape its destiny. Perhaps that is why the assassins do not truly belong to the Sultanate. They serve, but they do not bow. They kill, but they are never seen. They are a force beyond kings and sultans, beyond the tides of war, beyond the petty struggles of faith and empire. The Sultan wields them, but he does not own them. For a blade may rest in a man's hand, but it will never be his. The art of killing is not merely learned, it is remade into the very marrow of those who wield it. A Sultanate assassin is not trained like a soldier, nor disciplined like a monk. They are unmade and rebuilt, sculpted by agony and reborn through poison. There is no ascension without suffering. This is the first truth whispered to the chosen. The weak call it cruelty. The wise call it necessity. It begins in the silent halls beneath Alamut, where the air is thick with the scent of strange oils, where steel and bone are tested against one another in a ritual as old as war itself. Here, a child does not train to kill. He trains to become something else. His body is not his own. It is clay to be broken and reshaped. Strength is not merely built. It is grafted into muscle, forced into marrow through endless pain. They are stripped of their names first, then their pasts. Their voices come last, their tongues soaked in tinctures that leave them hoarse for months, until even their own speech sounds foreign. The mind is the greatest weakness of a man, and so it must be unwound. They are not allowed to think of themselves as individuals. They do not ask why. They do not ask how. They obey. And in return, they are given the secrets of the body. The assassins do not simply move fast. They move impossibly, bending space and time through the careful alchemy of their own blood. Their veins are tainted with the Milk of Manat, the supreme poison, introduced in slow, excruciating increments. First it burns, then it kills, then it remakes. The body, broken by the venom, learns to heal. The pain never fades, but they become something more, something that does not slow, does not falter, does not suffer wounds like ordinary men. The poisons do not end with the blood. Their flesh is tempered with strange concoctions, their bones hardened with alchemical compounds that strengthen them against impact, against steel, against time itself. Some assassins live for decades without aging as a normal man would, their bodies caught between life and something else entirely. But the greatest transformation is in the mind. A soldier fights with his hands, a commander fights with his will. But an assassin fights with every part of himself, his very breath a weapon, his stillness as deadly as his strike. They learn to control their heartbeats, to slow their blood flow until they can vanish from sight. They are taught to see in the dark, not with their eyes, but with the shifting of the air, the tremors in the earth, the rhythms of the world that speak louder than words. Some do not survive this process. Their bodies reject the poisons. Their minds shatter beneath the weight of erasure. They are not mourned. They were never meant to be. Those who live are stronger, faster, more than human, but less than men. For what is an assassin, if not a blade given flesh? What is a blade, if not the hand that wields it? And what is the hand, if it has no master but death itself? To kill with a blade is crude. To kill with poison is divine. A blade must be wielded, must find purchase in flesh, must be stained with the warmth of its victim. But poison needs no wielder. It whispers through the blood unseen, turns a man's own body against him, uncoils through his veins like a slow, patient serpent. The Sultanate Assassins do not merely carry poisons, they become them. The Milk of Manat is their birthright, their transformation, their curse. There are many poisons in the world, but none like this. It is not brewed nor distilled. It is bled from the veins of those who came before. An assassin's body is a crucible, their blood an alchemical vessel in which the venom is grown, cultivated, sharpened into something far beyond mortal understanding. The ritual begins in childhood, before the flesh has fully set, before the mind has learned to fear. The first dose is agony, a burning sickness that scours the body, boiling the marrow, forcing the blood to accept its new nature. Those who do not die are given a second dose, then a third. By the time they come of age, they have been remade, their veins running dark with a toxin so potent that a single drop could end 100 men. But the poison is not only for their enemies, it is for themselves. To an assassin, death is not a fear, but a tool. The Milk of Manat ensures that no assassin can be taken alive, that no secrets can be stolen, that no betrayal can be allowed to fester. A single thought, a whisper in the mind, and the blood turns black, the heart stills, the body collapses like a puppet with its strings severed. There is no antidote. There can be no antidote. The blades of the assassins are forged in this same poison, folded and quenched in venom, each layer absorbing the death within. A wound need not be deep. A scratch is enough. A whisper of steel against flesh, and the victim begins to rot from the inside out. The body blackens. The lungs collapse. The eyes boil in their sockets. Death does not come swiftly. It is not meant to. But the poison is more than death. It is memory. Each assassin carries the blood of those who came before, the venom of generations stretching back to the first blade. Their blood is their lineage, their identity. The only thing that remains when their name has been taken, when their past has been erased. To kill with the Milk of Manat is not simply to end a life. It is to continue a tradition older than kingdoms, older than war itself. This is why the Sultanate Assassins do not kill indiscriminately. A blade is only drawn when necessary. A name is only erased when the balance demands it. The Milk of Manat is not for the common soldier, the nameless heretic. It is reserved for those whose deaths will be felt across the ages. A warlord who stands against the Sultan. A prophet who preaches rebellion. A traitor who whispers secrets in the dark. To be marked by the assassins is not to be hunted. It is to be already dead. A hand will not reach for a blade, a gun will not be fired. There will be no struggle, no warning, only a touch, a brush of fingers against skin, a fleeting moment where death, unnoticed, slips beneath the surface. And then, in silence, the world shifts, and another name is forgotten. To watch a Sultanate assassin in combat is to witness something unnatural, a horror, a grace that should not exist. There are no wasted movements, no heavy swings, no desperate lunges, only inevitability, a fluidity that bends around steel and bullet alike, as if fate itself has already decided who will walk away from the encounter, and it is never the enemy. To the untrained eye, it seems impossible. A man cannot be there and then not, cannot twist through a hail of fire, cannot step through an entire squad of elite janissaries and leave only silence in his wake. But an assassin is not a man, not in the way others understand. They have been unmade, rebuilt, tempered in poison and agony until their bodies are not their own. It begins before the first blow is struck, before the first shot is fired. The assassin moves not with the moment, but before it. He does not react to an attack. He is already elsewhere by the time it arrives. His footwork is an art in itself, each step a calculated shift in probability, each movement an unspoken death sentence for those who surround him. A man might raise a rifle, might think for a moment that he has a clear shot. Then the assassin is behind him, pressing a blade beneath his ribs, whispering something that he will not live long enough to repeat. The strike is never brutal, never clumsy. An assassin does not need to exert force. He does not cut with strength. He cuts with precision, with inevitability. A severed artery, a punctured lung, a quiet collapse to the ground. The battle is over before the body has finished realizing it is dead. But to kill is not merely to strike. It is to move, to dance, to flow through the battlefield like ink spilled upon the earth, vanishing into the folds of the trench, rising from the shadow of a fallen soldier. There are stories of assassins who have fought entire squads alone, who have walked through gunfire untouched, who have turned battlefields against their own armies, whispering confusion and terror until men begin to see demons where there are only shadows. There is no single way to kill. Some die before they understand they were even in danger. Some watch the assassin approach, knowing with absolute certainty that there is no escape. Some are made examples of, left twisted and ruined in ways that serve as a warning to those who would oppose the Sultan. The killing dance is not just movement. It is silence woven into form. It is a language without words, a hymn of death sung only in the slowing heartbeats of the fallen. And when the last breath fades, when the assassin steps from the battlefield untouched, the question is not how he killed. It is how he was ever there at all. The night before a killing is the last night that truly exists. Everything after is silence. Everything before is preparation. No assassin begins a mission with the drawing of a blade. The strike is only the final note in a song that has already been composed, rehearsed in the mind 1,000 times before it is played. Every step, every breath, every death is already decided before the assassin moves. They arrive unseen. Not through magic, nor the impossible, but through understanding. Understanding the way shadows bend in candlelight. The way guards grow weary as the night deepens. The way men fool themselves into believing that, just for a moment, they are safe. There is no door they cannot pass. No sentry they cannot slip behind. No barrier between them and their prey that cannot be overcome with patience and precision. The world believes in locked gates and high walls, in steel bars and loyal guards. These are illusions. Nothing stops a Sultanate assassin once the contract has been sealed. The target sleeps, perhaps, or paces his chamber heavy with dread. Some are already awake, as if some deep, primal part of them understands what is coming. As if their soul, before their mind, knows they are already dead. The assassin moves with the slow patience of an artist shaping his masterpiece. The room is alive with possibilities, all converging to a single point, an ending. Perhaps the kill is silent, a slip of steel beneath the chin, a whisper through the throat, the warmth of life spilling onto silk sheets, staining them in finality. The assassin does not linger. He does not watch the light fade from his victim's eyes. His work is done the moment the strike lands. Or perhaps it is a warning, a demonstration, a message for those who would oppose the Sultan. Then it is slower, the cut deliberate, the body left arranged in a tableau of suffering, a silent sermon that will be read in the morning by those who wake to find their leader gone. It does not matter. The assassin is already leaving, already blending with the wind, the fabric of the night swallowing him whole. When the body is found, there will be no sign of struggle, no evidence of entry. The guards will swear they heard nothing. Some will begin to doubt, to fear. Was it truly an assassin, or was it simply fate? Because there is no sound, no movement, no trace, only the dead, and the knowledge that no man is ever safe. To kill is to take a debt that cannot be repaid. A man's life is not merely flesh and breath. It is history, possibility, consequence. When a Sultanate assassin claims a life, he does not simply end a moment. He erases futures, collapses unseen roads, twists the course of empires. But this debt is not merely owed by the dead. It is carried by the killer. The assassins do not believe in innocence. There is no crime in murder, no absolution in mercy. There is only the task, the mission, the name to be erased. And yet, the blood they spill does not vanish into the earth. It lingers. It soaks into their skin, into their bones, into the marrow of their existence. A Sultanate assassin does not live a life of his own. His days are not measured in years, but in kills. Each mark upon his soul is another weight carried, another piece of himself left behind in the silent rooms of the dying. Some learn to bear it. Some find purpose in it. Others do not. There are whispers of those who have turned their blades inward, assassins who, after a lifetime of blood, have sought to cut themselves free. They do not run. There is nowhere to run. There is no desert wide enough, no city deep enough, no shadow dark enough to hide from the masters of Alamut. But some do not seek escape. Some choose to pay their blood debt in the only way they know how. There is a name for them: the Forgotten. They do not break their oaths. They do not betray the order. They simply take one final mission, a mission without return, to kill where no man has ever returned from, to walk into the abyss, knowing there is no path back. Some step into the trenches, where war swallows all things. Some walk into the temples of the Heretics, blades drawn against 100 foes. Some enter the halls of the Sultan's greatest enemies, their work complete before the alarms even sound. And then they are gone. No graves, no mourning, no names written in the records of the order. Because an assassin is not meant to be remembered. He is only meant to kill. And when there is nothing left to kill, there is nothing left of him at all. There is no history without death, no kingdom without blood, no faith that has not been tested by the knife. The first assassin was not a soldier, nor a warrior. He was a shadow, moving through the chaos of empire, unseen yet inevitable. His name is lost, as all names are, but his legacy lingers in the veins of those who still wield the blade in silence. The Sultanate Assassins trace their lineage beyond memory, beyond the written word, beyond the wars that tore the world apart. Before the iron wall rose, before the Heretics tore open the gate, before the trenches became graves that stretched beyond the horizon, there was Alamut. And before Alamut, there was only the blade. The first blade was not simply a weapon. It was an idea, a truth whispered in the dark. That power does not belong to those who hold the throne, but to those who decide who sits upon it. That war is not won by armies, but by those who know where to place the knife. It is said that in the earliest days of the war, before the faithful had forged their great alliances, before the heretics had solidified their ranks, one man ended a crusade with a single strike. A sultan betrayed by his own blood. A brother whose ambition threatened to unmake the world. The assassin did not come in the night. He did not strike from hiding. He walked into the court, blade in hand, and placed it at the throat of a man who called himself untouchable. No one stopped him. No one dared. He spoke only once. "I am the debt you have yet to pay." And then he cut. That was the first lesson, the one that all assassins carry, whether they know it or not. That death is not chaos, it is balance, it is correction, it is the weight of all things, measured, calculated, and delivered without hesitation. The first blade is not a relic, it has never been found. Some believe it was taken back to Alamut, sealed away in the deepest chamber of the mountain, a weapon too dangerous to ever be wielded again. Others believe it is still in the world, passed from hand to hand, always moving, always striking where it is needed most. But the truth is simpler. The first blade was never a thing. It was an understanding, a philosophy, a single truth passed from assassin to assassin, from generation to generation, until it became something more than history. It became inevitability. And so the assassins remain, their methods unchanged, their purpose unshaken, their blades an extension of the first blade itself. Because war changes, kings fall, faith rises and crumbles. But death does not change. It only waits. A knife is only as sharp as the hand that wields it. But even the sharpest blade can meet another edge. Even the Sultanate Assassins, the unseen killers, the whispering deaths, are not without foes. The war in the trenches is a war of nations, of armies clashing in the mud and the blood, but there is another war beneath it, one waged in the silence between battles. It is a war of shadows, of blades that never gleam in the light, of deaths that are never reported in the tally of the fallen. It is a war where the assassins are not always the hunters. Sometimes they are the hunted. There are those who have learned how to kill the killers. The heretic death commandos move like ghosts, their presence felt only in the bodies they leave behind. They were not born into the art of assassination. They were reforged in the depths of hell itself, trained by the damned, taught to slither through the battlefield like phantoms of slaughter. Their masters are the archdevils of the Seventh Circle, their lessons written in blood and suffering. They do not fear death. They do not fear anything. And for all their madness, for all their allegiance to the abyss, they understand the truth of the blade. They know the assassins exist. They have fought them before, and when the time comes, they will fight them again. But the heretics are not the only ones who have learned to see the unseen. The trench pilgrims, mad zealots clad in iron and faith, are another danger. They do not move with silence, do not fight with grace, do not calculate their kills with precision. But they do not need to. Their faith is absolute, their convictions a shield against the subtlety of the assassins. To them, death is not an end, it is an embrace. And no assassin can strike fear into the heart of a man who welcomes the knife. The assassins do not fight wars. They do not engage in battles of attrition. But when they move through no man's land, when they step beyond the walls of the Sultanate, they do so knowing that the darkness is not theirs alone. There are others in the night, other killers who do not whisper, other shadows who do not fade. For every assassin who strikes unseen, there is an eye that watches, a hand that waits, a blade that is ready. And in the world of shadows, only the fastest, the sharpest, the deadliest survive. Legends do not grow from silence. They are born in the gasps of the dying, whispered in the trenches where men huddle against the dark, muttered by soldiers who swear they have seen something impossible, something that should not exist. There is one name that is never spoken in the courts of the Sultan. One shadow that even the old man of the mountain does not claim. A figure that moves beyond orders, beyond contracts, beyond the silent war that has raged for centuries. Some call him the death that walks. Others say he has no name, only a purpose. There are stories, always stories, that he was once the finest assassin to come from Alamut, trained beyond the limits of human perfection, forged in poisons so potent they burned his veins black. That he fulfilled his final contract, whispered the last name he was ever given, and then turned his blade against the very hands that had wielded him. No one knows if he still serves the Sultan, or if he ever did. Some say he walks where he pleases, choosing his own prey, deciding his own wars. That he moves between the battle lines, slipping through the trenches like a ghost, taking lives not for empire or faith, but for reasons no one can understand. Some claim to have seen him, but their accounts never align. A man in the garb of an assassin, but taller than any of his kin, his movements unnatural, his presence more spectre than flesh. A killer who does not vanish into the night, but stands in the open, daring his enemies to strike, knowing they will never be fast enough. There are rumors, terrible rumors, that he has gone beyond the limits of flesh and blood, that the poisons that should have unmade him did something else, that the endless deaths he has delivered have left him outside the order of mortal men. Some say he does not age, that bullets pass through him without finding purchase, that his enemies do not die from his blade, but from something deeper, from the inevitability of his existence. No assassin fears death. They are taught from the moment they are chosen that they are already dead. But him, they fear him, because he is the one fate they cannot escape. He does not leave warnings, he does not make examples, he simply arrives, and when he does, it is already over. No one knows when he will appear again. No one knows whose name he will whisper next. Only that when he does, the world will tremble. And another legend will be written in blood. There is a moment before the kill when the world is utterly still. A breath caught in the throat of fate. A heartbeat stretched into eternity. It is in that moment that an assassin truly exists, Not in the strike, not in the aftermath, but in the silence before the blade finds its mark. For centuries, the Sultanate Assassins have moved beneath history, shaping it without leaving a trace. Their names are never spoken, their deeds never written, their very existence a secret buried beneath the weight of war. But shadows do not last forever. Even the longest night must yield to the dawn. There are whispers that the assassins are fading, that the war has changed, that their methods, so precise, so inevitable, are being undone by something worse than any enemy, something they cannot fight. The world is watching now. The war is no longer fought in the dark, in whispered betrayals and silent executions. It is waged in fire, in trenches that stretch beyond the horizon, in fields of blood where faith and heresy clash with cannon and sword. The heretics do not fear the blade. They march in endless columns, their ranks swollen with the damned, their bodies twisted by infernal alchemy into things that do not bleed, do not sleep, do not die as men should. What use is an assassin against an enemy that feels no fear? The Sultan knows this. The old man of the mountain knows this. The walls of Alamut still stand, but there are fewer within them now. Fewer initiates. Fewer masters to guide them. The poisons still flow, the blades are still sharpened, but there is an unspoken truth among those who remain. The veil is thinning. Perhaps it is the war. Perhaps it is the march of time itself. But some believe it is something deeper, that the assassins, for all their mastery, for all their silence, are simply another piece of history that will one day be forgotten. That one day a final contract will be sealed, a final mission undertaken, a final name whispered into the dark. And then there will be nothing. No more shadows, no more knives in the dark, no more stories of the men who could not be seen, who could not be stopped, who moved like death itself. Only silence. Only the war, stretching on without end, until the last trench is filled with the dead, until the last soldier prays to a god who no longer answers. But not yet, not tonight, because somewhere, even now, the assassins still walk. And there is still one last name to be erased. A blade does not speak, it does not argue, it does not plead, it does not hesitate, it only cuts. For centuries, the Sultanate Assassins have lived by this truth. They are not warriors, they do not fight for glory, they do not march beneath banners or seek to carve their names into the annals of history. They are knives, instruments of fate, wielded in silence, forgotten even as they reshape the world. But even the sharpest dagger must one day rest. There is no grave for an assassin, no monument, no prayer. When they fall, they are simply gone, as if they never existed. Their names are never spoken, their deeds are never remembered. Only those who have learned to listen to history's hushed tones can still hear their echoes. And yet, for all their silence, for all their erasure, their work remains. The war rages on, as it always has, as it always will. The trenches remain filled with dying men, the heavens and the abyss locked in endless struggle. But the balance, fragile though it may be, still holds. The weight of every knife slipped between ribs, of every poison drop laced into goblets, of every whispered name erased before its time. These things have shaped the course of empires, of faith, of survival itself. Perhaps the assassins will fade, swallowed by the tides of war, overtaken by a world that no longer has use for men who kill in silence. Perhaps they will be forgotten, their mountain fortress crumbling into ruin, their legacy buried beneath the blood and ash of no man's land. Or perhaps they will never truly die. Perhaps as long as there are tyrants who think themselves untouchable, as long as there are wars waged by the blind and the arrogant, as long as there are names that must be erased before they can stain the world with their corruption, perhaps then there will always be a shadow that moves unseen. Perhaps then the last dagger will never fall. And in the deepest dark, where no eyes can see, where no voices can reach, where war and faith collide without end, the Sultan's silent wrath will always remain. Waiting, watching, ready for the next name.